If you could do roll call, please.
Councilor Legro.
Here.
Mayor Sakala is absent. Councilor Crissati is absent. Councilor Hall. Here. Councilor Mangini.
Here.
Councilor Matthews is absent. Councilor Pisner. Here. Deputy Mayor Santinella.
Here.
Councilor Thomas.
Here.
Councilor Ungary. And Councilor Zanoni.
Here.
8 members are present, 3 are absent.
Yes, and I believe we have, Councilor Matthews is just walking in the door.
Councilor Matthews is here.
All right, so I had an opportunity to, obviously, I spoke with the mayor this afternoon, just to confirm where we left off and how we want to proceed for tonight. I want to first start with the town manager. Are there any changes that you are recommending to the big board at this point? Has anything changed since we left here last evening?
So the only two things that we left last night with questions about, one was the movement of that one dump truck from the purchase, moving that to the lease, and the one dump truck from the lease, moving that out. I spoke with Public Works, and that idea came from them originally. I did ask the question, well, then what is going to happen to that dump truck when we move out? You're gonna see it the following year on the list for replacement. So what effectively they're saying is that truck can last one more year if you want to avoid that purchase this year.
Okay.
And that was a $325 purchase.
Okay, and that is not on the board at the moment?
Correct.
Correct.
So that's a question.
We have $600,000 reduction. Is that something else?
Yeah, that's
That was the CIP.
That was the CIP fines, John.
Right, but we were gonna take the way I understood it, the 325 was gonna come out of the purchases,
Yes.
and then, which would be in the same transfer.
That was,
So I just want to make sure that it's not.
Yep.
yeah, it's not
That was
double
separate.
counted.
Okay.
Okay,
And then the second thing was the transfer station.
yeah, and the transfer station is on the list for us to try to get through tonight. Okay. The next thing, I just want to talk about the meeting on Monday and procedurally how that meeting is going to unfold. It's a pretty standard set of resolutions and amendments that take place. I was hoping you would be able to kind of take us through how that works. I believe there's a main motion that is offered where we adopt the budget.
Yep.
Then there is a motion to make amendments to the budget as we have worked through this process will come off of the town manager's budget. That will be, we will go through the amendments one at a time or potentially as a block, depending on where we end up. Then we will do a block grant to the Board of Education. And then we will set the mill rate. Is that correct? Those are the things that we will go through.
There's three.
So that's how that meeting will go.
So, and we'll run our amendments too.
Yeah, so what
We'll have our own amendments.
Yes, so we're gonna put them all in one, we'll put them all together in one list of unified amendments. And we'll go through them. What we've done in the past is we've read them one at a time.
Yeah.
And where we've not agreed, we will take a roll call vote.
Yeah.
So they'll all be in the same document, the same list of amendments.
Steve, can you have Alex put my screen, because I've got like a calendar screen.
I don't think he has the board up yet.
Oh,
Yeah, but I should, usually I have what's up
She should
there.
have.
Oh, you usually have the team
Yeah.
stuff?
Oh,
Yes, so, but there'll be individual resolutions for
Oh, there we
each
go.
adjustment.
so Carol, how it
No, I
has
got
been
it. It's all
done
good.
is
Sorry, Alex.
like an Excel spreadsheet.
Thank you, I
Okay,
appreciate it.
with amendment number 1, it is move this to this, it is cut this line from this to this. It's one at a time, it's not a separate sheet. It is
Yeah.
it's
But
a,
they're all separate resolutions because everybody's gonna vote on each individual adjustment.
yes, but the way they look is they are line item resolutions. It's not a separate
It's a
sheet
separate
of
vote.
paper.
Yeah.
It's a,
Separate vote.
yes, on a roster of
Yeah.
amendments.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So,
The amendments are motions. They
that's,
have
yes,
each-
that's correct, right. So that's that process. So for tonight, what I wanted to do was take this one chunk at a time and kind of bring large blocks of the budget that we've discussed to conclusion if we could. So I figured we would start with the Board of Education budget. And I believe you have some comments on the Board of Education budget. So I'd like to, if it's okay, Counselor Hall, I'll turn the floor over to you and you can walk through where you see some some changes. Oh,
I just want to make sure, because the superintendent can't be here until after 7:30, is that?
I understand, yep, and I feel that we should just start there.
Okay. And I don't, so I'm gonna speak for myself, I don't need the superintendent here. I don't have any questions, but maybe other people do. So I'm gonna just put that out there.
I suggested that he come in case there was a question for him.
Right.
He's not gonna be able to be here on time, so if we don't need him, we can text him and tell him.
Yeah, I don't need them,
Okay.
but maybe other people might have questions. So let me get to my numbers here. So basically, a lot of people may not be aware, I'm gonna just give a really brief history to the board never used to, and Cindy will remember this, and Zach might remember too, but the board never used to be able to carry money over from budget to budget. So at the end of June, their budget had to be zeroed out. And the thing that we were seeing as the state and local, Matt can comment on it, was come the end of June, there was like a spending spree just to spend down the budget so they didn't have to turn back money to the general fund. So what the state decided, and I was there for this discussion and vote, was that instead of the boards on June 30th to June 15th buy 20 cases of I'm just throwing this out, of pencils or erasers or whatever it could be to get that zeroed out budget, we're gonna allow them to carry money over. And that carryover was to offset the asks from the towns. So it was meant to keep the ask at budget time kind of more flexible, if you will. So if you had money at the end of your, we'll call it the 2% account, because now it's up to 2%. We started off at 1 and 1.5, and we adjusted it upward. So now they can hold 2% per year in their accounts. So right now, and I guess I want to put out there that this was never meant to be a slush fund, if you will. It was actually to offset the mill rate and help the taxpayer, so we weren't wasting money. So right now, in their 2% account, there is $1,593,051. That's in that, we'll call it the 2% account. At the end of this year, so that's in the account now, at the end of this budget, June 30th, they're expecting another 1.178347. So another 1.78 million in, if you will, leftover money. With that surplus from this year's budget, they're going to have to pay back to our insurance fund $855,177. So what that leaves you with for the lapse of this year is a delta of $323,170. So if you take that 323,000, add it to the 1,593,000, you get a total of, what was it, 1 million something?
$1,916,221.
So this is money that they have in their reserve funds that can help offset our taxpayers' mill rate. So that's the adjustment that we want to make on the ask of, well, the board, to round up to numbers, are asking 4 million in increase. So we're saying you have this $2 million in your reserve 2% fund, or you will have at the end of June. So we're looking to take 2 million. So we're gonna take that out of their increase they're requesting. And that's not touching that 1.4 million that came out of the ECS that they're holding on to. It goes directly to them for the adjustment for the alliance money that pulled out of the ECS funding. So we're not even talking about that money, but that did impact our budget this year. If you look at the revenue lines that John put in the budget, it affected the town's tax number this year. So that's what we're proposing. It's money that they have already. It's not cutting their budget, but it is adjusting their ask. And it's money that's sitting in their account.
So your request is to reduce the
Their ask.
block. So in regard to the block grant that we will be giving, you would like to reduce the block grant by $1,916,000.
You got this. Because they have it there.
Okay. Is that the only adjustment?
For the board,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Perfect. Do you have any comment on that or anything you'd like to add? No? Okay. So then moving on from that piece, I would like to talk about the public safety section. We had a discussion last evening. As I understand it, we are in alignment with where we ended up after our conversation last night. Is that correct?
7, are we at
In
7?
terms of so
Okay,
the entire budget, yes, and the 7 cruisers is where we ended up.
okay.
So do you have any other comments or concerns about public safety, that whole section of the budget? Okay. Okay, the next large department is DPW. Are there other changes or comments that you have for that aside from, I know that we can talk about the truck. There's some discussion still about this truck and whether or not we should be pulling this out of the, whether it be a lease or just keeping it in and what the implications are of the plan. So your comments or your input on that.
Well, we still feel strongly the number that I put out last night. I don't agree with many of the vehicles that are on the replacement. I mean, we as a caucus discussed it. We've gone line by line in this on numerous times. I mean, and we still do feel very strongly that a lot of these vehicles still have some value in life. So I just think it's a big number for 1 year.
Yeah.
$2 million is a huge ask for 1 year.
So if I could ask the question this way, instead of looking at it as line item vehicle, what is the dollar amount?
We came up with that
What
last
was your
night.
dollar
I
amount?
think it was $1.2 million.
Is that your number?
Yeah, it was
1.295.
1.295. Thank you, State.
I apologize.
No, you're fine. I just have so many papers because we've been doing,
Your proposal is
Yeah.
1.295?
yeah,
And
that
then
was,
ours is coming up.
That is, Okay, but that is,
So we're taking
that
off
is
for
reduced.
reduction of six
Yeah,
hundred.
that's what we want, yeah, right.
We want to do 600,000.
Thank you, Zachary.
Okay. On the DPW front, are there other sections or comments in that?
The other
part?
was the custodial, which we
custodial.
had said we were good with 2.5 more, but not 5.
Okay,
So just to be clear on that, so you've already added 3 this year.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're saying 2.5, that means you're gonna be cutting one of the positions you funded this year.
No, you're asking for more in the budget.
No, asking for 2 more in the budget. The reason that it shows 5 is because in last year's budget, those 3 positions were added after the budget. So you right now have 3 positions that you voted on earlier this year in the budget. And so there would be 2 additional funded.
I thought those were already put in here. I didn't.
Matt, can you give us a page number in the budget, please?
When I asked about that the other night, that was not the response I received back. When I asked about how many new positions, they came up as new positions. I thought they were new positions for this budget. They weren't considering the ones that we had voted on because I questioned that.
There's only 2 new positions in custodians in this budget from what currently exists in the real world for us.
So in my book, it's 60,
Marie, you're working out of the
out of the
white
white
binder.
book. It's page 60.
Okay,
It's 59 is custodian, and then 60 is the breakdown of the personnel.
So when I asked that question, I said there's 5 new positions, and I was said, yes, that's 5 new positions. So,
I think it says, for Matt, so currently it says 33.
Yep.
And proposed, it says 38.
I thought the 33 included the 2 we just gave them.
No, 33 is what was funded in fiscal year '26.
Okay.
Yep,
After the budget was adopted, and so it's not showing up
it's not
because
showing up.
those
Okay.
positions were not loaded into the budget. They'll be loaded into the budget this year, right?
So you want, so I'm going to say then, honestly, I think 35 is a good number. I think what they have is a good number.
So right now, they're 36.
That's, so he's,
36, then I would just leave it and not add.
Okay. So it's the two new
So,
positions.
2 new then.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear.
so on, Marie and I are looking at page 60.
Yep.
Right, so you are recommending, or you would like to see
36, so, yeah,
36 instead of 38
Correct.
proposed custodians.
correct.
Can I have a thought on that, Mr. Mayor?
1 second, let me just capture this, please. Yes, Counselor Zanoni.
Thank you. So, my perspective is on this is kind of the perspective of what we hear a lot in regards to the CIP, which is what we don't fund this year, we have to fund next year. So at the inverse, what we choose to fund this year in regards to staffing are things we will have to fund next year when our deficit will be even larger. So with that in mind, I think we should stay steady at the current number of positions. I think we need to be mindful, for instance, at the CIP, we're mindful of deferments, raising the deficit, making it current now with understanding of revaluation next year is going to greaten that deficit further. So I think with that in mind, I'm comfortable with keeping the current amount of positions.
plus or minus,
30
Plus
zero.
Plus zero. Okay, so you're fine with doing what Marie just said?
36.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay, that's a long way around.
Did that
I
make
just
sense the way
wanted-
that?
yeah.
Well, I, yeah,
That's why I asked you again.
Thank you for clarifying.
okay.
Okay. All right. In their CIP, they are asking for the robot to do the fields. I don't really feel we need that either. Our caucus doesn't think that that's a priority right now.
It's CIP, I think.
It was CIP, but it's under DPW.
What's going on with
So he's
CIP?
asking.
Counting against our mill rate though, aren't we using the fund balance for it?
So that is, and that is that, I believe that was a $58,000,
It's 50 I have written
50.
down here.
50,000.
And I still have some questions on like the professional services that they're using. And I know the mapping, and Matt, you said last night that the mapping that we have to do, because it was in the audit, you want to see it done the same as like the bus route so that the refuse trucks are running on it. And you said that the BOE had that to do the busing. Well, why can't we use theirs to do the refuse? Why do we need another piece of software? Why can't we share it?
Private business.
Well, I mean, BOE and we kind of share it. I mean, I can't imagine that it's that difficult to do buses versus refuse. But it's $44,000 to figure out where our trucks are supposed to go. I just find it, so I'm looking at it this way. I think every single department is going to ask for every single thing they want, because if they didn't, we would have nothing to deliberate. But we work for the residents of this town. And we owe them the due diligence of going through this and scrutinizing it carefully, methodically, so that we're not, it's an equal. And I just see that this, I know they give us a lot of services. I know DPW encompasses a lot of our services, buildings and grounds, our highway, plowing, field, I get it. But I still see this as one of the heaviest budgets. So I see that there could be cuts in this.
Okay. So Councilor Prisoner,
I've discussed it with them. So
so
they're not in agreement with me. They're not going to be in agreement with me.
I'm sorry, if I could, you had a specific question about why we couldn't use the school bus software
Yeah.
to schedule the dump trucks. Did you get an answer to that question?
No, because last night Matt was the only, I found out last night that Matt said that the school buses used one. So I'm assuming we have one. Is that true, Matt? Do we have this, how did BOE do their buses?
I'm not sure. I know that they did it because the superintendent told me that that's what they did. But I don't know anything about what they did, to be honest, other than they told us that they did that.
Is that the school bus own that software, is that's a private?
I would assume that-
I mean, is it possible that that was done by Smith Bus?
I don't know, but I honestly feel that it can be done without spending $44,000. I just think that's a large amount of money.
So if it's okay, I will make a note that we will look to see if there's redundancy in that and then get back to you with an answer about that. May I ask the DPW director a question?
yeah.
Okay, Donald, do you know if it is possible to use, are you familiar with the school bus mapping system?
I don't know.
And, okay, and you don't have any sense of whether or not it's compatible with
I don't
running
know.
dump trucks? Okay. So, Councilor Prisoner, just, the question is, if they're not compatible, and the school bus software is, I don't know the answer to your question, so I'm just proposing a hypothetical. If the school bus software is not compatible to map dump trucks for whatever reason that is, are you advocating for removing the software expense altogether?
Yes, I think it can be done, and I think, honestly, I think either of these gentlemen should be able to do it. You take the amount of your vehicles, you take the routes that they do, the time that should be allowed. I don't see it to be that, a $44,000.
It's 44,000.
What page?
And what page is that?
I'm looking, hang on, give me a second, guys.
So refuse is, I'm not sure on yours.
Should be page, is it 59? No, hang on, let me see.
Which book are we looking at?
Marie is working out of the white book.
I have a white book. It's just as easier for me because I know.
No, that's the one that I've been working out of as well, so.
All right, so no, I think it's page 57 that was, hang on, because it was a new line.
65 in the blue book.
55?
65 in the blue book.
55.
Supplies and materials for the floor scrubbers, which I still think should be in the
Purchase
CIP. Right here, under machinery,
Professional and technical.
on page 59. You said the machinery, the 44,250.
What number, what line?
On page 59, under property, under the machinery, was that it? Or was that the floor scrubbers?
Pardon?
59 in this.
Yeah, I got it.
You got it.
Yes, thank you.
Because I got told a couple of different answers, so I have,
So it's in refuse collection and disposal. I'm not sure in the binder what number it is, or what page it is.
59. And the bottom. Under property.
no, that's custodial
So
maintenance.
in refuse collection and disposal, it's going to be found under the other professional services,
Oh, there it is, yeah,
under
43.
purchase, professional and
Yeah,
technical,
right there.
where the number is 43,000.
Right,
I
43,000,
believe
I'm
it's actually
sorry.
40,000 is what the number is.
It's on page 65, and it's line item 53, all the way down at the bottom. Other professional services. Because the year before, it was 4,000 that they spent on it, and then it went up to 43,000.
Okay.
So the actual number, so in that, there's 43,000 for the total line item, but you have 2,000 being spent for scale calibration and testing, which I'm assuming is for the transfer station. You have repairs to the scale, which there's always going to be repairs. And then there's $40,000 for the truck route mapping.
40 now? 40, 40.
May I ask you a question, just to go back a second? Do you have a number for what is the cost of reducing the custodians from 38 to 36? Do you know what the dollar amount
I
attributed to
can
that
I
is?
can get that, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine.
Give me a second, I can do that.
Health insurance.
I have it fully loaded.
You just took the base number, right? And then use the benefit numbers on custodians. On
Yeah,
our
that's what we
sheet.
did.
On our
Yeah, we
sheet.
did 2.5 because we thought it was a total of 5 and it came down to
So that would probably work out about.
132.
132. If you add the benefits in, it'll probably be more than that. So,
So 2 custodians fully loaded is $180,986.
80. You get that change to one number, 180.
96.
180,986.
180,986.
Yep,
That's everything weighted.
that's fully loaded.
2, again, sticking outside of CIP and not getting into the vehicle section in the truck, because we're going to deal with that, but the other changes to this section.
That was taken out, sorry, that one was already taken out, apologize for that. So 57. supply materials that were for 25,000. It was a brand new line item on page 57. And then above it was other purchase services. That went from $2,300 up to $25,000. I mean, I think there should be some type of I just can't see something going from 0 to 25,000, and then 2,300 up to 25,000, and then 500 up, professional development went from 500 up to 11,820. It's a big jump.
I have to get lined up with your page numbers and get where you're going. So
Okay, page 57,
Well, on Blue Book?
No,
I'm using the white one because I
Public
made one
Works,
mess. I
Buildings
didn't
and
do
Grounds.
the mess.
and areas.
It's the same.
If we gotta,
It's the same lineup, I think.
57, if you start at line item 53, purchased and professional development went from $500 to
I just put it down as
$11,820. And you said that was for safety protocol.
This is the
But
same
what
thing.
exactly?
with numbers on it.
This one has page.
57,
Is that the same? This one.
the top says buildings and grounds, public works.
So in this, the training that they have is aerial lifts, OSHA 10, asbestos awareness, cargo securement, Public Works Academy 2 Center, building operator certification training exam training for facility managers. So Eric's here and can explain any or all of those.
So from 500 up to $11,820.
Yep.
I mean, that's a huge increase in 1 year. I just don't understand, did it go up that much money, or is this something new that we think everybody should have?
There, come sit up.
So the change is, we were not in compliance with the training requirements for our staff, particularly in B&G. And we took a long, hard look at that after the events of last September. And we found that we needed to significantly increase the amount of training that we were providing for that division, as well as others. So across the board in DPW, you're gonna see a significant increase in this line for every division. WPC, Highway, RRM, B&G, Custodial. We are doing a lot more training with our staff to make sure that we're in compliance and they're staying safe.
Eric, so we have, after our OSHA review, right, we were kind of dinged, if you will, for some things that we needed to fix, right? If there's a recurrence or another incident and we haven't done the training, I would imagine the exposure to the town would be pretty significant if we have not properly addressed what we've been asked to address. Is that fair?
Penalties for non-compliance like that would be very severe. I think that that's not a road that I even want to consider. I think that it was an eye-opening experience to have that resource, and OSHA, Connecticut OSHA was especially helpful and cooperative. They were really fantastic. They continue to be a resource to me and Donald. We are in contact with them and they provided us a lot of great resources. But they've really increased our awareness that there's a lot of training stuff that we need to be doing with our staff. And this budget will enable us to do that. Right now, we're sort of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul in order to get our boxes checked and get this stuff done. And it's putting us at a loss. This is good planning, and it puts us in a good position for the coming budget year to manage those expenses and track them accordingly, so it's not a big surprise next year.
And I just want to point out, in these type of programs, they allow us down the road to reduce significant costs. And not just from the injury, well, mainly from the injuries, because if we're training our employees to do their job properly, they're not getting injured. And that then lowers our workers' comp costs. We spend over $2 million a year on workers' comp insurance. $2 million. That's crazy.
Right. And
And so this is a risk management tool to reduce a cost that we have to reduce, or it's just gonna keep going up. And there is a connection between what we do training-wise and how Kerma views us as it relates to that workers' comp pool that we're in.
Okay.
We do nothing, it goes up.
Counselor Prisoner, does that change your perception of this line item?
I do.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So Kerma used to provide a lot of these programs, Matt, when we had Kerma the first time. I don't know if they're still providing those programs or not. And that was one of the things that when we switched it back to Kerma, because if you recall, we were having major problems with Kerma. Major problems, and we dropped them for a while. We went privately.
Yep.
I don't think I was here when we went back to Kerma, but one of the arguments I know that was made to take Kerma back on was they offered all kinds of safety training for free. So my question is, are we in these numbers, are we planning trips somewhere else? Are we traveling somewhere else when we can get these safety training programs through Kerma itself and not pay anything?
I'd like to speak to that, if I could. Yes, so Public Works has taken advantage of Kerma heavily. I've reached out to them. We have a rep that Steve put us in contact with, and WPC, come to find out, had already been doing a ton of that stuff. So we broadened that out. We're using a ton of Kerma resources. They're providing us probably 10 times the worth of what you see here in this budget. These are for items that we can't get through Kerma, that are more hands-on in nature. Specifically aerial lift training, OSHA 10 certification training. These are things that Kerma is not going to provide at no cost, or they require specialty things. There's other trainings that I've been fortunate enough through contacts. We did the OSHA 10 class this year for free. There's no charge to the town, and I think that was in itself was probably a $10,000 training deal for B&G.
So what specifically is Kerma telling us we need to do better, or as John said, we got dinged on?
Well, Kerma's not the governing body on that. They're a resource that we would reach out to. Kerma's not driving this. This is an initiative within the DPW. Some of this stuff is in response to the OSHA citation, sure, but it opened our.
But it's not all.
Certainly not. No, operationally, we took a look at all the areas where we had exposure that are parallel to this. So whereas the OSHA citation was really focused on one particular standard in OSHA, there are many other parallel standards where we have the same exposure that we need to address. So this goes a long way to doing that, and Kerma certainly is a resource that we're using for no cost to do a lot of this.
So,
I'll add just real quick, since Eric's been here, he started looking at our training for our employees. So a lot of this had already been in play or starting to get into place in terms of what the procedures and standards were going to be. This is the first opportunity in this budget to actually start implementing the planning that he put in place.
so is this something that you can do within your budget now? And tell me specifically, like, what is increasing in this budget? Like specifically that you're adding training for?
Sure. So recently we visited you at a council meeting and requested a transfer of $4,700 for aerial lift training that covered staff from 4 divisions. We didn't have the money in this budget to do it. It's an annual requirement that we need to do in order to send our staff out and use bucket trucks, scissor lifts, rental lifts for decorating the Christmas tree, and so So that's a cost that we weren't able to take on in this budget. We had to go to the council and ask for money, and thankfully you were able to provide that so that we could get that done prior to the next budget cycle. This is a busy year for aerial lifts. We're not doing a lot of that in the winter. So I really wanted to get that training done as soon as possible rather than sending guys up without the training that they need. That's one great example. There's dozens more. Confined space training. There's first aid items, there's defensive driving, the gamut is endless. But the stuff that's really, really important, we tried to do with what we had this year, to answer your question. Yes, we found ways to work budget this year to do it.
And let me just say that what they did was they robbed from other line items to move it into this.
I did want to say that.
Well, I'm saying because next council meeting, you're gonna see a transfer request for $500,000 because now we have to actually pay the bills for all these movements that were done. So.
I also want to add, Eric, how long have you been with the town? About a year and 2 months?
I started on April Fool's Day of 2025.
All right, so prior to that, I don't know how much training was being done by your predecessor, but when you came in, you took a fresh look at what needs to be done and what the protocols are for the employees in that respective industry.
That's accurate. The DPW had been doing a lot of good things. I think we're more organized now, and we're moving to a place where our employees are better protected and empowered. And I think training is one of the most valuable things you can they say with preventative maintenance, $1 pays $5. I think training is twice that. If you enable guys to make good decisions in the field without you standing over their shoulder, they're going to save you a ton of money in the long run, just like Matt said. The risk mitigation is massive.
The total amount that you're concerned about is $11,000, is that correct? Do I understand that correct? I'm sorry.
Professional services is on page 65. It went from
I apologize.
4,000
Not
to
looking at
43, so it's $39,000 increase.
$39,000.
Right, professional services. No, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. I lied. No, I'm in the refuge. Oh my God.
It's
Yeah,
11.
Councilor Pizarro, you and I are lost in the same
11,320.
things because it's repetitive.
So, no, I'm sorry. So it's 500, it's going up. So it's about $11,000.
$11,000. $11,000.
So, again.
So after what you've heard, are you comfortable leaving it in the budget? And if we don't use this money, that it'll be an $11,000 transfer to the general fund or not?
Is that for?
It's for our three, I mean.
So,
we're-
yeah.
Well, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Councilor Pisner asked,
Go ahead.
brought this up, so I'm
Right, so
asking.
I'm listening to it, and he said it was 4,700 for one thing. We're saying that Kermit can have something. So again, my goal is to get this below where we left it last night, the mill rate. That's our goal. So wherever I can find savings, I want to find savings in this budget. Whether it's $500 or it's $50,000, I think we need to go through this line by line, which is what we took the time to do. Do I understand more? Yes, but if there's a lot more free training out there, again, if we cut it in half, I mean, it's still $6,000 that we find on the table here instead of 11. But what are you looking at? I mean, I'm just saying with you guys. I mean, this is.
My feeling is and Matt, you're saying that we spent 500,000 on things that we needed to do in Public Works in order to do training? Is that what you're telling me?
No.
Okay,
No, I'm saying
so what are
is,
you saying with this particular line item? Like, so,
You said you were
So
transferring
what I
$500,000.
believe Matt said was, we are going to see a $500,000
Right.
transfer
right,
because they have had to scrape from one account to another to do other things, which has left a $500,000 cumulative hole
yeah.
that we now need to fill
So-
before the end of this year. So it's not,
and part, let me
Do I have
say,
that right?
part of that $500,000 is you budgeted 1.3 million in electricity, and that's going to be probably north of 1.6 million this year.
So that's.
There's a number
electrical.
there, yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
my point
That makes
is, that a part of that was filling the holes that had to be filled for, moving money to get salt paid for. When there was different breaks.
And we've
because
had
they-
to do that in the past when we've had really bad winters,
Sure,
anomaly winters, like
well,
we had this year. I know you keep saying it was normal, but everybody that lives here knows this winter was
well,
not
it's-
a normal
It's abnormal the
winter.
last few years, but
So we've done that in the past.
yeah, well, I will say that every year you do this. I mean, you may not see it as it happens, but, back in October, I think it was, when we did the closeout of the previous year, there was over $1.5 million, $1.8 million. There was a lot of money that was moved around to plug holes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that we were great 10 years ago, but you weren't seeing necessarily that amount of money being moved around to plug holes.
Yeah.
And so, there is a history of moving money around to fill the things that need to be done. And that's my point. That was my point of this budget is that's not a way to do business. I mean, we should be funding these things at the level of the operation, not hoping that things, hoping that, we're going to have a below normal year in winter. I mean, you remember how we used to do. We'd look at the last 5 to 10 years of the winter, average out how many events you had, and, we had down to what that dollar was, right? And that's what because if you remember we would talk about how many snowstorms are we going to have.
Right.
And that's not necessarily how things are done.
Yeah.
And so we don't have that predictive information in here that allows you to make a good determination of what that is. I mean, again, if you look at electricity usage for the last 3 years preceding this, you wouldn't have budgeted $1.3 million. You're going to use more.
Right.
And you ended up budgeting $1.3 million for whatever reason.
Right.
And so now we have to do that. And that's what I'm trying to do with this budget. And again, I think I've heard the word fat being used, and I appreciate that concept, but I don't think, it's a perspective word, right? One man's fat is another man's bone. So I think, again, you can make those cuts, but understand at the end of the day, we're going to have to do some training that's going to require money. And if you don't put it in now, when it comes up, we're going to be coming to you, and you'll have to make that determination then to do it or not do it. And if you tell me that, well, we're willing to pay for it, but not through the mill rate, you can do that. But again, that's only as good as, the revenues that are coming in and how much fund balance you have.
Right.
And if you keep doing that, at some point, you're not going to have fund balance, and the revenues aren't going to be good. Go back 15, 20 years where, revenue started to go off and the state wanted to, cut the money they're given to the towns, and you can't live that way. And then what are you going to do?
But I mean, in fairness, Matt, if you're looking, at the revised budgets, like just for example, on page 57, this year, last year, we were at 5,600,000, and the proposed is 7,100,000. So we're not saying
Well, then,
take those increases. We haven't said that. You know what I'm saying?
right, but again, in this budget, this particular one,
Yeah.
you have 3 positions.
Yeah.
Remember, we talked about those. You have the increases related to the wage, the contractual obligations with wages.
Yeah.
You have the 7% effective across the board for health insurance. You have, 700,000 more for electricity.
Right. And we're not touching any of that, right?
Well, as long as you're not touching those things,
Yeah.
and the supplies and materials.
So Yeah, we have not cut the operating budget at all. Other than,
Well, what you're talking about now, she identified
the
other
trade.
line items,
right,
so.
right.
So you haven't cut those yet.
No, whatever we just gave you was the amount of, the only cut we've suggested, and you've got millions increased here. So we're talking about a small amount in the budget.
Well, but I thought she listed out a couple other line items in this.
Yeah, but they're still minuscule
They're
compared to
small.
2 million.
They're not
I mean, we're not
millions.
2 million in cuts from this
Right.
page.
We've got a lot of increases here.
I'm just questioning the larger things that, like I said, you know, the supplies and the materials that went from 0 to 25,000, the things that went from purchase services that went from 2,300 to 25,000. That's when the way I've always done the budget, this is my 5th budget, and I learned this from the very first budget. Go line by line and look at the large increases, because those to me stand out. I look at this as a household budget. If I was paying $1,000, and then suddenly it cost me $10,000, I would question, what's that 9,000 going for? So that's where I find my questions.
Okay.
And again, it did not equal to, and I didn't even, I looked at gas, I looked at electricity, I understand that. But some of these things, and I do understand that training's important, I'm not saying it's not. But if it can be done through KERMA, and there's other ways to do it, I just want to look for the most savings we can.
It's okay with you, Ken, Councilor
I
Matthews has a
have a
question.
clarifying question / statement through you to the town manager. I'm just gonna wait for him to be done talking. Yes, no problem. So when we are looking at what was budgeted last year, that's not necessarily what was spent last year, right? So when we are seeing increases on these line items, I believe that staff is also taking into account what they had to spend over what they didn't budget for. So I'd like you to, does that make sense to you?
No, because it should
So
be in
the-
here what they spent.
It's not. So this is what was budgeted, this is budgeted, not actuals.
We don't have the actual.
We don't have the actuals. So I'd like you to kind of keep that in mind as well, because they had to spend over and under on some of these line items. When they increase these line items, they're adjusting for what they found they didn't budget for correctly last year as well. They're trying to get closer to 0, closer to actually spending what they need to budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It might help to see actuals in the future, so that you can see why these
Well,
numbers
that's
got
why I
adjusted
have
the
all
way
the
they
budget
did.
books from the day one.
But they're all
Well,
budget,
those will
not
have
actuals.
actuals in it because.
Maybe, I don't know.
The adopted budgets
These
have
have
actuals.
actuals, like if you look
Yeah.
on page 57, we have all the
Actuals for 2025.
But yeah, so keep those,
Yeah, but those are all the actuals for 2025, so that's where I'm saying, that was 0. The actual was 0.
These are the actuals.
They're in the
What
budget
we
book.
don't have is the actual.
Years, 20-to-date actual.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I
What
mean.
we in front of do.
Yeah.
Right, so,
Good.
so understand that the revised, 2026 revised only reflects the council actions that revises it. It doesn't reflect the other internal transfers that happen.
Yeah,
Well, I just don't want this to be carried over into the mill rate. I really don't. I mean, so, again,
I think these are minor cuts. They're not massive cuts.
If I could I go to the DPW
Yeah,
director?
can I just clarify the other purchase services that went from,
23 to 25, 2,300.
we are taking over the fire.
I know, we've gone through there. Those are the fire things. And then there's the supplies and materials.
I got that one. The supplies and materials you see there are removed from another place, so we need to be able to keep track of the actual like tonnage of material that we put onto paths, walkways, ball fields, and places like that in this division. So they used to be found in the 5614 account, and we moved it to materials so that we can keep track of it better. And that's, that budget number reflects pretty close to the actual from this year. It would also include things like playground mulch, mulch for beds, any kind of tonnage trucked in material that we would get from a material supplier out of a big pile.
So if I could, just before we continue on the $11,300, just to see where we go with this. So my personal opinion here, based on what I'm hearing, the impact of spending this money potentially is a multiplier in terms of savings from the workers' comp insurance and potential decreases there over time, not to mention the liability that we are exposing ourselves to if we were, God forbid, to have some sort of other incident based on sort of our recent history, that this seems to be a relatively small amount of investment in mitigating our risk. So I don't know that we're going to get consensus on this, but if there is consensus, I would like to advocate for keeping this money into the budget, because I think it ultimately will pay us dividends in a meaningful way. I seem
Agreed.
to have some, Cindy. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think professional development, it's a minor investment, and I think, quite frankly, a lot of our employees are undertrained.
Okay.
Including the council, so
Okay.
everywhere needs professional development.
Agreed.
So, I mean, at this point, if you would like to propose that as an amendment on Monday, we could take it to the floor, we can certainly do that. But I just don't, we haven't discussed this in detail before. I just don't think we have consensus about it. So I would leave that to you whether or not you want to make an amendment to that line item. Okay. Fair? Okay. Were there other things?
Nope, we're good.
Yeah, we're good on DPW.
I have some DPW questions.
Yep.
Related, kind of under the umbrella, because we never finished the conversation about the fuel contingency. Were you here for that conversation?
Was that at the end of the meeting yesterday?
That was the first meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
So my concern about utilizing the fuel contingency out of the budget is that, given that it's not necessarily, I think, going to be a long-term expense that we can expect year after year after year, given it's this geopolitical event, that it would be more beneficial to take it out of the fund balance. Because I don't anticipate us needing for it to count against our mill rate if we're not expecting it to be a reoccurring expense. And now if it turns out next year this is an ongoing problem, then we can budget for it accordingly, but I just don't anticipate this issue to go on for the foreseeable future, for years in advance.
So I'm going to offer you my thoughts, okay? The budget should reflect what our actual operating costs are, we anticipate them to be. And in this current environment, we anticipate them to require us to have this surcharge that may or may not go away in the near term, midterm, long term. We don't know. But this is a planning document for us on how we are going to operate. It may very well be that it becomes a recurring expense or maybe more in subsequent years. If in fact it is not, it is a savings in a future year because of changing environments. But I think sound financial policy and sound budgeting should reflect what we anticipate we would be spending, what our actual costs are in the current year. And I think I would just discourage people from looking at the fund balance as a way of mitigating what our actual operating costs are. And I think that it's better policy to have it built here with a potential understanding that it's a potential savings at some point down the road. And that's no different than any other expense here, that if suddenly the cost of IT became 25% less in future years because of some drastic development, we wouldn't say we should use fund balance to pay for IT expenses because we anticipate them becoming less expensive in the future. That is my philosophy. I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No,
I'm just sharing with you kind of how I see that. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask the town manager for his opinion on that.
He had opined on that during the original
Okay.
meeting. I think.
Has your opinion changed on that?
No, I'm, I was just thinking that, if everything would have happened like 2 weeks before it happened, I would have put in the budget, and factored it into the budget, the amount of money that we put there, that 200,000. And we probably would be talking about, is that going to last beyond July or not here right now, right? I mean, that would have been the discussion, not, should it come out of fund balance or not?
I also just like to say this, I'm sorry, you done?
Well, I was just,
And then,
I was just gonna finish by saying that I don't disagree with what Zach's saying with this, is that, in another month, this may all be cleared up and we're looking back to where we were going to do. And so there wouldn't be any impact to the fund balance. So I mean, it's a good gamble from my perspective to take, but.
Go ahead.
So I agree with you on the premise that we need to plan for the expenses that we have, but I think there's a difference between what we qualify as an emergency expense that we know is not a long-term situation or likely will not be long-term versus a temporary expense. And I think I actually referenced it at the last meeting. It's no different than what transpired in Hartford when you carved out millions of dollars from the state's rainy day fund to create those contingencies for the one-time supplemental funds for the towns, for the nonprofits, for the social services. All of that was not countered with revenue increases on the state side. It was carved out of the rainy day fund because they were anticipating those to be in the event of an emergency and as a result of a unique political situation that's happening in DC. So I see that here in Enfield reflected in the fuel, that we're pulling it out because it's an emergency situation and that I don't anticipate it to be long-standing. But I would agree with you. I think there's a lot of conversations to have, like 3-4 years is what I would look at as these are things I want in the budget because we can consistently count on them to be in here.
So can I suggest this, because maybe we don't know where this is gonna go, and I don't know how you feel about this. Would we feel better, would it be acceptable or more palatable to people if we made that a $200,000 surcharge instead of 400,000, and so we mitigate 200? I'm sorry, I thought it was 400.
No, 200.
It's 200. We cut it in half. If it mitigates some of the taxation issues, but it also leaves us in a place where we at least in the near term, have money set aside. And if things don't get better, then we understand that we could be looking 6 months from now for a transfer for this specific purpose. And if things do get better, then we had made a reasonable assessment. That's just an option.
I'm open to that, like for the perspective of people. Want to go like round robin or?
I mean, people, but
So
you
is it
feel
a
like,
$200,000
Yes.
increase because of our gas situation right now, right? So I agree with you in the sense that this is kind of that, and I think that kind of holds true a little bit when we look at the salt consumption too, because even though we're told this is a normal winter, we all have lived here long enough to know it hasn't. So do we buy salt for this kind of winter every single year? Or do we go, yeah, this was hopefully an anomaly and history shows it is. So I agree with you on that. So I'm good with taking that cut.
are you good with taking $100,000 out of the 200, or do you want it zero?
I'd take the 200. I'd take the whole thing, because you're taxing people on this.
It is such a 100,000 is a relatively minor number on the fund balance for it.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
with
not like
all due
you're
respect, we
taking
just spent 20 minutes talking about $11,000. And so I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just trying to point out that $100,000 in this is, it calculates into mils. But I also feel that we don't want to create holes in the budget because we know that there is a real issue The weather is the weather. We cannot possibly predict that. But right now, if anybody goes to the gas pump, you know that it is more expensive. And we don't know when it's going to not be more expensive. So I think for us to not do anything, again, this is my point of view, is not responsible here. Councilor Manning.
I would not agree to removing the 200. I would consider the 100, but that's still a gamble, in my opinion.
Anybody else?
I'm not the gambling kind, so.
Councilor Matthews, any thoughts?
I would go with whatever the town manager suggests here.
What is your recommendation, Matt? Is
On the
this your
spot.
recommendation? No, I honestly-
You're very welcome.
I mean, you've heard our concerns and you've heard our input, and I
Yeah,
think
I feel like
this is why you're
this is
here.
why-
So
No, no,
what would your recommendation be?
Again, I would go back and agree with what Zach had said originally, which is this is something that I would gamble that if it's going to be long-term, right? Because the problem is we just don't know, is this going to last 4 months, 8 months, 12 months? And when we brought this forward, you know, obviously when I proposed the budget, we weren't sure how long the conflict was going to last. But now we kind of got into it. It's like, well, we want to make sure you understand that this was not considered. Here's what we see, the worst case scenario, we think, of that. And if you're going to plan for it, the budget's the best time to do it. It was brought up by Zach that, well, maybe we should, you know, put this in a different category, keep an eye on it, come back sometime in the future and understand we may have to appropriate for it, you know. The point of why I said that if it happened a few weeks earlier, I would have put it in the budget, we would have been debating how long. The conversation probably would have been, well, where does it settle in the next year, right? You know, does it go back to where we were when we calculated, you know, at $2.50 a gallon? Or does it go to $2.60 a gallon? You know, only goes down to there. And so there is a little bit of exposure for next year in doing what Zach, you know, originally had talked about. But again, I think I would have gambled and you know, put it in the fund balance. I didn't think about it, so when he brought it up, it's like, it's a gamble.
That's what I'm going with.
And you know, my gut tells me because gas prices go like this,
Yeah.
next
They
year
always
we
go
may
down slower than they go up.
Right.
Right.
And so there's better than 50-50 chance that it won't go back to where we thought it was going to be, which was $2.50 a gallon over the course of this year. But, you know, to your point about setting us up for next year, you know, could we be back to $2.50 a gallon next year? Yeah, we could be. Maybe not. You don't know, right?
We could be at $9.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's.
We don't, but let's hope that that's not even.
But again, I think in the grand scheme of things as it relates to budgeting, you know, every year is going to go up and down.
Yep.
You know, we're not going to know until next March.
So where are we on this? Your recommendation would be to take it out. Okay, is that where everybody is feeling?
Yeah.
The town manager's recommendation, okay? So if we could remove that.
And then start to see.
Where does that, what's that do for us?
He's going by department.
Okay, 171.
171.7.
You took the dump truck or no?
No, we haven't gotten to that yet.
1.71.
Okay.
Yeah. So went from 1.77
Yeah, we took that
down
off.
to
I had a question.
1.7.
Yeah, okay, hold on. Okay, go ahead.
So Donald, can you just elaborate on the fuel station? Because I had heard conversations that a prior council had approved some appropriations for parts for the fuel station, is that correct? Okay, and this was the preceding council?
we had budgeted half this year and half for this coming year. Half for 26, half for 27.
Okay, so last year there was 400 or 800,000 already appropriated, correct?
Yep.
And you have spent the 800,000.
I've spent the 830.
Okay, thank you. So that addresses my concern with that.
And just so that you know, that was a discussion early on, and I believe that we caucused on this or talked about this.
Yeah, because we just
Because
didn't-
it was a timing issue for DPW, because if the work was not done, just so people who are listening, so we understand, there was a deadline for the work to be done by October 1st. October 1st. If we did not, there's a lead time to order materials, so we needed to place the order for the materials to spend the first $800,000 to then make sure we had what we needed so that we could be done in time before October 1st, or the penalties are significant. So we we authorized the spending of the first 800 with the understanding that there really was no return to not spend the second 800 because we would have to put things in. And not doing so would be even more expensive.
Thank you, I appreciate
Okay,
that.
yeah.
And I just wanted context of like where it came from.
Yeah,
So the
that's
fire
where-
council and the
yes. That's correct.
I had a question about,
Before you go on, can I ask, seeing we're on that particular item, can I
Yes.
ask something related to that?
You can ask all the questions you want.
The total of that project is 101.6 million, is that what we're saying it is?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the total,
That is the total,
1.6?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And it was, and you got the part where it was started by the previous council. It was budgeted for, right? You got that part, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just,
Okay, so that was in last year's CIP, I guess?
yes, and yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else?
yeah, this is just for contextual understanding. Can you elaborate on the fleet and vehicle insurance when it went from, so 59,000, it was 26, 59,000 for 27. Do you anticipate adjustments if in the future, I'm not necessarily proposing any cut, but I just want context. Anticipate adjustments in the future up or down based on a reduction in fleet or upgrading our fleet to newer? Will that raise our vehicle insurance costs?
Well,
Because it's higher assets?
adding additional vehicles would do that. Having a lot of accidents would necessitate an increase. Just because the value of the vehicle is greater doesn't really, I mean, you know, when Kerma does the rates, and right now, I think we're in the last year of the lock for the rates.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
that's why, so this is why it hasn't changed from the preceding
right,
fiscal year.
so next year,
We'll get
there
it.
will be some type of adjustment.
Okay.
I'm guessing that adjustment's not gonna be down.
Okay.
But there will be an adjustment. You know, there's a lot of different factors that goes into their rate setting. So I mean, I don't understand it, to be honest, but I know that it's a combination of a lot of different things.
Underwritten.
Less related to the value of any vehicles.
I feel like, I think that's all I have for DPW. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Great,
Can I ask,
Did
on
you-
the insurance piece that we just talked about?
sure. Can I just, if it's okay with you, I
Yeah.
want to just make sure, we've talked a lot. I just want, does anybody else have any questions that they feel like I haven't had a chance to speak? Okay, go ahead.
So Matt, seeing that the contract with Karma is up next year, is that something that we can talk about, not now, obviously, but when it comes around, maybe going out to bid again like we did when we had the other company? I mean, if there's savings there,
Yeah,
and we did save when we went out.
yeah, no, I think, you know, when we went to CCM conference, when you go into their expo center, right in front is Kerma.
Mhm.
the first booth you see,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Dave Demchek
Yeah.
saw me.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
He
yeah.
kind of turned.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyhow,
Yeah.
Your friend wasn't there, though.
no, but, this is, the lap and the workers' comp is something that is at the top of the things that we're looking at
Okay.
to try to get reduction in.
Oh, good.
I mean,
Okay.
it just,
That's my question.
we're well over 3.2 between
Okay.
us and the schools in total.
Well, that's what drove us away last time, other than remember how badly they were handling our workman's comp?
Yeah.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So we dumped
We had-
them
yeah, we had
last
to,
time
yeah.
because of one, service, and two, cost. And then when we went out, we saved millions of dollars. It was substantial, so.
Yeah, no,
All right.
they understand my viewpoint.
Okay, good.
On this, and I think it's something that, again, USI, who is our broker that handles that, they've stepped up already, and we're doing a lot more meetings and talking about how do we bend that cost curve down.
Yeah,
And the marketplace is not as favorable as what it was 10 years ago.
yeah, I'm
12
sure.
years ago when we changed.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so, we're not in a position right now, when you look at our workman's comp costs, what the actual spend is, to be as competitive as what we need to be to see those. I mean, at the point in time we moved to Travelers, we had cut, what the actual workers' comp spend was.
Yeah.
And Curva's response was, so what? And that was the end of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They weren't going to recognize everything that we've been doing.
Right. And that was a good move
Yeah,
at the time.
But, so I mean, I think that has to be at the top of the list of things to look at.
Yeah.
I mean, health insurance.
Yeah.
That has to be at the top of things to look at, and those are the things that we've been focusing on since I've been back.
Okay, great, thank you, thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else from DPW?
Did you have the information for the transfer station? Because it's that,
I'm getting a, no. Next on my list is the transfer station, Mr. Zanoni. So I believe there was a discussion about the increasing the pass, correct?
Annual pass.
The annual pass rate, and that was.
So let me-
These.
Yeah, hold on, let me pull up this here real quick.
So honestly, I had some questions on that because we didn't get a hard copy of it, but I just had a picture of it on my phone because I snapped a picture of it. So Carol and I we were discussing those numbers today and they just didn't seem right to me. The ones you gave us for the transfer station, because again, there wasn't a hard copy, so I just snapped a shot of it. And Carol and I, like I said today, discussed it. We were just kind of questioning if we were reading this right. So a one-day residential pass and an annual pass are both $10. That, I mean, why would you buy a one-day pass when you could buy,
You only need it once, it's like the same.
yeah, but still.
Yeah.
I mean, an annual should be more money than a one-day. So we were just, I mean, no, and this I think could be a DPW thing.
it will.
So,
But we were looking at this like, something's not right.
so I think, I think that there is a pretty broad consensus that we're a little bit off balance here with the transfer station and making sure that we're not at break even. And so, it's no different than the transfer station, right?
No, I'm just saying, it's a DPW
But
thing. we should talk.
I do think rather than try to address this here in the budget, that it is a DPW issue. And I think it's very reasonable for us to be able to look at those numbers and try to come up with a better policy that's going to mitigate the loss.
I'm not even pulling up, but, so what I had done was looked at the difference between the pass increases versus the weight increases, so what we charge on weight. I think to get, a $20,000 increase on the passes would necessitate a larger increase and become a barrier to people using that service, right? So I think the better way to go is to look at the pounds, and so, I'm going from memory here, but a 1 cent pound increase, so when they're bringing their materials in, equates to about a $15,000 increase in revenue. And when you do a 2 cent increase, that equates to about a $30,000 increase in revenue. Where, again, I still remember the numbers off the top of my head. If you look at increasing the passes, you're probably doubling, tripling what that fee is to get any amount of additional revenue.
So it's the
More
weighted-
Contractors though.
so
I
it's
think
the-
contractors should go up, but that's
It's the
fine.
weighted amount that's gonna make a notable difference.
I think it's the one
That's
that's
that
going
bottom
to.
half of that chart.
Yes.
Because when I looked at that too, I was,
Saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this should go to.
So if I could just call order here for a second, I really believe this is, if we can agree, I don't want to turn this meeting into a DPW subcommittee meeting. If it's okay, I'm not trying to stop discussion,
No, I agree.
but I think we're gonna be able to make more progress in with
Right.
DPW, if we can all just agree to that. Are you okay with that?
I mean, I had discussed my reservation about it, but I guess you have consensus to do that, so that's fine.
Right, but I would also like you to feel good that that's a better,
I think,
a
well,
place that.
it's
we can
just that-
solve. We don't, I don't know that we're gonna get all the information that you need to be able to make that decision without us having some policy change to back that up. And I think we're going at it backwards if we make a financial decision without understanding what our policy revisions need to be. So that's my caution here. Okay.
And I think there's more than just that. I mean, that's a revenue. I think we really need to look at the cost side of that as well. And so I agree. And what I put together really was just show that it's possible, and this is probably the better way to go about it. But there, as you said, there's a lot of policy that needs to be developed to go along with that. Because again, just here in a few minutes, Marie brought up, kind of the disparity between the contractor and the residential. And that's something that needs to be discussed, I think.
So on this item, I'm sorry, Councilor Ongari, no, okay, so on this item, I am noting that we are referring this to the DPW subcommittee for review.
Perfect.
Okay. The next thing that was on here, there was a discussion, I understand, about a position in the tax assessor's office. We were split on that. I had not been on the call at that point. I have communicated to the mayor that I am in favor of this position, so that's kind of where there is consensus to keep that position. So I just thought I'm offering sort of where I am on that after discussion with the town manager and the mayor. I think the next thing is the dump truck. That is a $300,000 question, and I'd like to try to discuss and bring some resolution to that question. The question is,
I thought it was when we left last night, but I
say that again?
But it's not.
It's not on board.
I'm sorry, what was your question? I didn't hear your question.
It's not on the board.
It is not on the board because the question was whether to move it into the leasing program and then what would happen with that truck ultimately. And I believe the question was, should we get one more year out of it in the leasing program, but then next year we were going to need to replace the truck anyways? Is it better to just replace the truck now? That's my understanding of
That was kind of the question.
that was the question.
And so I asked, the answer was that they felt that, and why they recommended that, was they could get one more year out of that particular vehicle. But again, if next year comes around, you're gonna see that on the list to be replaced. So you're effectively putting that one off for a year. But
And clearly, then we are on notice that we are putting off a $300,000 expense that would then sort of mushroom into whatever was ultimately gonna go into that spot, similar to what we've done.
yeah, and so you just be making that decision next year,
Right.
to replace it or not replace it.
Counselor Zerling.
Yeah, so my reservation is exactly what Matt had noted. If it's, this dump truck's essential, if there was a conversation about the feasibility of taking this specific truck out of circulation and not placing it at any moment in time, taking it off, that would be a conversation that I'd want to have. But if it's just to defer it till next year, like this is where I have a lot of reservations about in regards to the CIP, because there are certain things that I think I'm not deferring because I'm not going to support funding them next year or any other succeeding year. But if this is a vehicle that you view as imperative, I want to fund it now. So that's kind of my perspective on it. So what is the feasibility of this vehicle needing to remain in your fleet?
Before he answers that, let me just say why I think what they're proposing makes sense now. Normally, I wouldn't probably agree with this, but I think because we're going to start a process after this budget's done that's going to look at all the vehicles. I'm assuming one of the things that's going to be said in all this is Public Works Subcommittee is going to be looking at all the vehicles, right? And so I know we're going to be going through all the vehicles with Public Works. And it's going to give council the ability to be more policy-driven in those decisions than where you're at right now. You're making decisions right now on money, not policy, right? And so I think this gets us the equipment that we need. You know, it gives us a surety about the operation going forward, although tomorrow transmission could blow, you never know. But, you know, I think they're comfortable in making that, and it gives us the time necessary to go through this. So when we get here next year, you know, the look of what the plan is may look different, right?
So I think that does assuage some of my concerns, because my understanding is kind of what I'm gathering here is having a conversation about the amount of assets we have in our fleet. So while we may defer it till next year, consolidations we make in other areas could infill, yes?
Right, yeah, I'm thinking, again, you know, what I don't like about the budget process this year is I'm still learning everything. I had to relearn, right? And so I'm making recommendations at times on things that I don't feel 100% confident in. The vehicles are one of those areas that I don't feel 100% confident in. So as you know, debate with me, keeping it, not keeping it, I'm going based upon what I'm being told, not what I feel is what Matt Koppler feels, right? And because, you know, it's easier to fail on the side of replacing than not replacing. And so when they have said that, you know, we can do this, that's people that I have to trust, you know, thought through what that means, right? And that's what I'm going, you know, to side with here today. But understand, next year, it's not going to be me trusting what I'm being told, it's going to be me knowing what I think is the right thing. And in that process, I hope I bring all of you along with me, and we all kind of agree what that is. And so I know the process we're going to be going through may change what this recommendation is. And we may not need that truck. I don't know, sitting here today. So
Can I ask, with the big board right now, is this in this calculation or not?
this is still in the budget right now. We haven't
So we've not taken
deleted
it out.
the.
So where we are right now is with this truck staying in.
Purchased, yes.
Okay.
To your point, in the budget, is it being paid for out of the fund balance for the CIP, or is it being counted against Like, was that kind of where you're going? Because my perspective was is also where the money is coming from.
So all I was asking is there's the big board is up there, there's a calculation. I wanted to know whether it was in those numbers or not in those numbers.
So-
And the answer is it is in those numbers.
Yeah, it's in those numbers. So what is being recommended is one of the large vehicles in the lease, can't remember what the number is now.
615.
615, would be taken out of the lease. This one, which is 808?
808.
808. Good. 808, it's now scheduled to be purchased in that $1 million in vehicle fleet, would be taken out of that, put in the lease. And so you would be reducing the vehicle purchase by 325.
So this would be coming out of our general fund and not that fund balance?
It would reduce your mill rate by 325.
So it's coming out of the mill. That's what I just wanted to know if it was coming out of what we allocated, taking from the unallocated fund balance, which was that kind of 5 million-ish number, which doesn't have as much impact on the mill rate. So
Well,
that
I
addresses
mean,
my
it-
question.
you know, both the fund balance and the mill rate, they're an aspect of each other. And so what you're doing, whether you consider you're taking out fund balance or the mill rate, doesn't really matter. I mean,
Except for, when people say.
That
Go ahead,
answers my question.
Councilor
Oh,
Mangini.
no, are you
Yep,
done?
he's
I am
done.
done. Yeah.
Through our deputy mayor, to our town manager, for Public Works, gentlemen. So my understanding then is we did make the swap from purchase to lease. Now, if we
we haven't done that.
remove it,
We're recommending that, or I'm recommending that.
okay, so we remove it. Because Public Works, people are saying that they can go another year without, they're comfortable with that. And you're comfortable with their decision.
Well, without looking at them, I'm not gonna characterize it as comfort. I think that
Okay, you're okay with it?
I think what I would characterize their thought process is that if you're going to reduce a purchase, this is a better way to achieve that, that's going to potentially have less of an operational impact on them.
Gotcha, thank you, thank you, I
Okay.
got it.
So it seems as though we have a question for you. In your reduction of the DPW vehicle budget, was this $300,000 included in that?
Yes.
325, isn't it?
325, yes, it was.
I want you all to know I'm writing in the roundest number as possible
That's
here,
fine.
so.
Yeah,
okay.
325, yeah.
So 325, so if we move this into the lease program.
Yep.
I'm gonna ask, are you comfortable? Tell us your thoughts on that, really. Because honestly, I think we're talking about a significant asset that you use for things that affect people's service and everyday life around here. So I really think we would like to hear from you.
After a long discussion with Rick Davenport about it and looking back at the repair histories and things like that, we are comfortable with doing this, so we should be able to get another year out of it if that's
Okay.
what it is.
Okay,
So,
so,
I mean, it's the best of the worst, so we
Okay.
can look at it from that way.
okay, so, shall we make that change? Yes. Okay, okay, so we'll put that up on the board. That reduces your, 1295,
Right here, John.
Your number now is $970,000. You'd like to see it changed by, is that correct? That's the balance? Okay.
That's what I think.
So while you're doing that, John, I just want to make a quick
Hold on.
161.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Okay.
we use the dump a lot. Fred said the dump pass is $20 for him.
That's what I thought it was.
I don't know if like we get charged extra because.
It goes by license plate.
They say,
It
oh,
goes
here she
by
comes.
license plate, so if you have 2 cars, it's $10 per license plate. So if you use it,
Per vehicle.
yeah, per vehicle.
No, we use one car to go to the dump, and he pays $20
Mine
for
was
a dump
$10.
pass.
Is it a truck? Is it like
No.
a F-250?
No,
No?
no.
Oh, I don't know, that's.
Mine's 10.
So you're getting a good break.
Mine's 10.
Yeah, so you get a super
So
good
we owe you
break.
$10.
Well, we've been paying that for a very long time.
You give one thing for
Do you have
a
receipts?
black
I
ice
think you can come to general government and we might be.
No, and my point is, are we charging people $20 and we think we're charging $10?
The initial dump, what you brought, plus the $10 for the annual pass.
So is it,
Yeah,
is
it's-
that the
if you-
pass or is that his trip to the dump?
It's the trip and the pass on the same day.
Yes, so if you, the first time you go, it's $10 for the pass, $10 for the dump.
For the trip.
If
And
it's
so
under
you might think you're paying $20 for the pass, but it's for the whole thing.
But
'Cause you're paying
if you're
the-
going multiple times.
You don't.
$20
Then
every
Then it should be
it's just
$10 after that.
$10 or the weight. It's
Or
for
the
the
weight.
There's
Yeah.
always a wait.
So the weight, there's
Yes.
two levels to the weight, so if it's under 260 pounds,
Yeah,
it's $10 flat.
yeah.
If it's over, then you're paying whatever the
Yeah.
per pound fee is.
Okay,
So it's,
so you're saying the initial visit for people it's really $20?
well, it could be more because it's $10 for the pass and then whatever the dump fee is going
Yeah,
to
because
be.
it's under 240. So it'd be $20. Or
So,
260.
okay, because he says he pays 20 for the pass, so, and then whatever the weight is, we pay.
Right,
So-
you would, but it would just be 10 plus 10 at the
Because
time.
that's why, it
Yeah.
wouldn't make sense, it doesn't make sense
You
to
go
me
more
to,
than-
I know, we're backing up,
I know.
I don't want to take us off track.
Yes,
Yeah, we went down the rabbit hole.
There's no doubt.
Taking up the DPW.
Forget the dump.
Yeah.
We're gonna figure the dump out.
Figure it out later.
I said
Yes, transfer station, yes, I know, I'm
Okay.
old school.
Are there, so I'd like to move on. Other comments, changes that anybody wants to put on the table?
I have a question.
Well, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Is there anything else
Yeah.
that
It does
anybody
seem fun.
wants to put on the table?
What else
Okay.
do we have?
Well, those are the only cuts we made.
Yeah.
And the rest of it now is the revenue part of it.
Oh, the
We're gonna ask
Okay.
questions.
So, and the mayor told me that there was a question about adding revenue onto the budget.
So I have a question for Matt and John Wilcox. So I asked this question last year. I'm gonna ask it again, because I didn't like the answer I got last year.
Councilor Pisner, can I just interrupt for 1 second? Can the DPW guys go? Are we good with them?
Yeah,
I just let them go home to their families and we can
Yes,
finish?
you're good.
Yeah.
Good night. You're welcome to
good?
stay.
We do have cheese and pretzels.
I ate all the cheese.
Sure. Yes. We're done.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
School superintendent should.
I told him,
Oh,
I
did you?
did say to him,
Okay.
just so everybody knows, you said you didn't need to speak to the superintendent. I did text him to say he did not need to come. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So my question is this, and I asked it last year, and I honestly brought every single budget book from day one that I've been on this council to prove my point. So every single budget, we have prior year levy.
Can you refer to page number, Maureen?
Okay, so go to page 15 in the binder. And so according to it, where it says prior year levy, that is the taxes, like, that we expect to get, like back taxes kind of thing that we expect to get, correct? Okay. Every single year, going all the way back to 2021, we budget 1.3 million. And we, in 2024, the actual was 2,767,836. The actual in 2025 was 2,451,279. So why is that number always so small when we have historically brought in more money? I mean, and I honestly, I have all the books. I carried it like a bag.
What did they tell you last year?
So again, it's your prior year levy.
Well, no, but what did they tell you last year? What was the answer to that question?
What I got told last year was that this is the way we have budgeted historically, and we shouldn't take any chances.
That's a bad answer.
Well, you know what, from 2021, I mean, I see this year, we're going at 1.7 million, so at least we're trying to raise it a little bit. But
Okay, yeah.
that, to me, we're talking $1 million right there. So if historically we're bringing in that kind of money, why are we budgeting so low? That could be another $1 million.
John, do you have an answer?
I have a question.
I'd have to look back at prior,
I mean,
at
like I
the
said, I brought
actual
all the books,
system.
just because this frustrates me.
I mean,
Well, I'll wait for this question, whatever this question, maybe I can answer both at the same time.
Okay, yeah, so my first question is if we can, where are we at right now for acquiring last year's taxes? And my second question is to Marie, because you have all your books with you. What was the low number for the actuals and what was our high number? Because you said $1 million and the 2025 actual was 2.4 million.
Okay,
So
so if you look
that
at what
we
they
would be under
budgeted,
budget.
so in 2021, going back to my first year here. Okay,
I'm gonna write it over here so just bear with me.
Okay.
21.
so in 2021, the price, I need something to do this
Oh,
with.
shoot,
because
I
I
can't.
couldn't see.
Otherwise it'll go.
All right, it was,
Gotcha, thank you.
the actual for 2019 was 1,396,000.
Okay,
The actual in 2020 was 535. The actual, and then they budgeted. Then it jumped up drastically. Again, you look like a bad lady, but you know, hey, it's what I have to do sometimes. This is the 2022 one. It's just a big number to me, and I go after the big numbers. Okay, so then it went, the actual, again, we had a bad year in 2020, COVID. So 535, 2021 was 1,668,000. Then we started in 22, 23, we started budgeting at the 1.3 million, and that's when we really see the big jump. And we start taking in a lot more money under that column. So I just, it's right here.
we know the policy rationale behind what?
Yeah, that's all I'm asking, because that's $1 million.
I believe the town manager has an answer.
Okay.
Matt?
Well, I have an answer. I don't know if you'd like my answer, but I have an answer. I was just trying to pull up what the actual is right now. Because I think we're right now at, or a little bit above 1.3, where we're at, I think. So when you're looking at the prior levy, and this was actually a big discussion when I was here last with the finance director at the time. Lynn liked to keep that number low because she looked at it from a GAAP perspective. And you know, those numbers would be applied in the, I think they're applied in the undesignated fund balance or designated fund balance. There's a reserve for some of the taxes that are owed but not paid yet or something like that.
that's not that, it's usually for the fund balance that's reserved, so.
Okay, so there was a reason I didn't quite understand it because I was like you, was pump it up, right? But so there is that policy aspect of it from a financial perspective that you don't want to overdo that number, right? So that's kind of the policy. But here's kind of the practical piece with it. So the way that you arrive at those numbers is based upon how much taxes haven't been paid in the past, right? And what are you doing to collect those taxes now once they're in the past? If you're not doing, you know, if you do regular tax sales, the amount of money that you have in the past gets reduced quite a bit. Right, because you're always on top of it, so the amount of money that's collectible actually goes down. And so if you're doing that, those numbers go down as well, right? Because you don't have as much to collect because you're doing a very impressive job to collect it. Communities that, you know, have high payment rates, so they're like 99% instead.
No, it's good, again,
I'm trying to look.
I'm bobbing through heads here. Keep forward for a second. Go forward
These are
or
the
back,
long-standing
Zachary?
issues. I'm always
Pick
in
a way.
way.
So those communities that have, you know, high payment rates, you know, in 98%, 99%, and not just in the vehicle side as well. And, you know, again, their past levies are going to be a lot smaller. You know, one of the things that really drives our past due is the vehicles. I mean, when you look at what we say we charge in terms of taxes and what we actually collect is a big difference. I mean, if you look at the numbers in the books, you see that what we estimate and what we actually collect, they're not as close as what you want to be. And I think the auditors said we're like 94, 95% on the autos. Personal property this year is higher than what we projected. And the real estate is running a little bit lower than what we projected.
And historically, what is that number? Do we usually get like 95, 96?
I think real estate's usually in the 90, you know, I'd say 97 to 98
I thought
is
we were
where
pretty
we're at.
close to almost
Yeah.
100%.
We're very good.
So-
Our collection rate is very good.
No, that's why when I look at this number, it was so low.
There are a number of uncertainties that are in unknown items, okay? You start with the grand list. That's when I calculate what the mill rate is, that's what I know is, and if we have to, the earlier we have to do the budget, I may not know that number, which it would introduce even more. But once the assessor creates the grand list, this is the baseline of what we're gonna build. Subsequent to when she produces the grand list, we go to the board, they go to the Board of Assessment Appeals. I try to identify the known areas that we have uncertainties there. We don't know who's gonna come in and request what. We have certain items that we get every year, and I can account for those. So I adjust the grand list amount by what items I do know that are going to the Board of Assessment Appeals. There's other assessments, motor vehicle supplement, I don't know what that number was gonna be. I try to put in an estimate for what that's gonna be, because obviously that does impact the taxes that are gonna be collected. But there's a number of uncertainties that are in there that, you know, I just don't know the numbers. So when I get to a net billable, this is the amount that the tax rate is going to collect, you know, I try to make it as known as possible. Sometimes we have things like, well, right now, the Mass Mutual building has filed a suit against the town for the assessed value. They went to the Board of Assessment Appeals, they were denied, and now they've gone to the next step. That's the normal next step in the process. I don't account for that in my adjustments to the grand list, because it wasn't known at the time, and I didn't get it. So that's a pretty big adjustment to the grand list value if it happens. There's, you know, things like that. When that happens, if they get that value reduced, well, I'm gonna have to then, we're gonna have to take that out of, most likely to be another year, it'll come out of the prior year levy, when we have to refund those numbers, or those amounts to them. So it's kind of yeah, I understand, we haven't had a lot of those in the last couple of years, but they do happen. The last couple ones, the mall was a big one in the last year. What was then they did it again in 21, I think. So we had to go back and refund them 3 years worth of value.
So that's why those numbers were smaller
Right.
than what the last 2 years have been.
That's why we can do, but we try to, kind of budget conservatively for a lot of that uncertainty that's in the baseline of what we're gonna calculate the tax based on.
So what are the actuals for this year right now?
1.67.
1.67?
Yep.
Six, seven.
Six,
Yep,
seven.
got it.
1,677,100.
Cool hip council we got, we know 6'7".
And so you're.
We don't know how to use our
looking at your
computers, but we know
proposed
6'7".
1.7. So is that when you came up with that number for the one?
So,
Now, the way that we talked about this, so let me finish though with one other point to this. So the last few years, the town has been budgeting $5.5 to $7 million in fund balance to kind of reduce the tax burden. But you're not using that amount of money in reality, right? You're not using that fund balance. And one of the reasons that you're not using fund balance is because historically, sorry to use that word,
That's okay.
they've been underestimating in the budget a few of the different revenues.
Okay.
I mean, you can see that very clearly that
Yeah,
Right.
here's what the estimate is, 1.3,
right.
but it's 2.1. And so where you can look at that today and say, well, we can bump that up, but if you bump that up, that means you're more likely at the end of the year, because you're including it in your expenditures that you know of, that if you make those expenditures you're not aware of, or say you're going to do in the future, then you're more likely to actually use fund balance. I mean, it's incredible when you look at it, that, the amount of money that goes to balance our budget, but in the end, you don't spend it. And one of the big reasons is you're over, if you look at the original budget versus the actual, you're overperforming in a lot of revenue. And some of it you can't. I mean, if you look at miscellaneous revenue, right? Sometimes there's $50,000 in a given year, the next year there's 600,000, like this year, because there's things that just aren't known. So, I mean, I think that is a result of the conservative practice of estimating. And again, I don't, we haven't been together long enough to really get into discussions about those things. Yes, it produces in the budget process, a benefit, but you have to change the other things you're doing to make sure it doesn't become a detriment in how you budget. But,
So just if I could, in my conversation with the mayor this morning, this is one thing we discussed for quite some time. We were both of the opinion that we are not gonna, and recommend to our caucus, is not to be trying to build in more unforeseen revenue into the budget, that is just not a good idea or to take, so to follow the town manager's recommendation. So we're just on our side, for the risks that could potentially come from that, we're just not comfortable doing it.
And
I'm glad that you asked the question.
But again, I've just been
Yep,
looking
no,
at these
understood.
numbers and I'm seeing, 1.4, 1.3, that's a lot of money towards a mill rate.
Right. It's a great,
To me,
understood, but
it's
I
a
think,
lot of money towards the mill rate.
but I also think we understand the risks mitigated.
I do, but I mean, again, it's,
Okay.
one quick plug for having a financial plan. We would be able to probably mitigate all those risks if we had a plan and be able to do what you're saying.
And follow the plan.
Next
We have
year.
work to do with being said. Okay, so that being said, this is where I understand we are at this point. The big board has a 1.61 increase in the mill rate, or 5.11%. I think that there's consensus around where we are at the moment. I do understand that there there are some further amendments which you would like to propose. So for our meeting on Monday, as I understand from our conversation tonight, that there's consensus on our side to approve and adopt the Board of Education budget. There will be an amendment requesting a reduction of 1.916 million to account for the 2% carryover without touching the ECS adjustment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct, okay. So we would need to have that prepared when we get to the adopting the Board of Ed budget. I think that you have still some suggestions of, and on the other amendments that you would like to pursue is $970,000 to further reduce the vehicle budget. You would like to eliminate 2 custodians, the robot. There is a question about the mapping software is whether or not there's some redundancy between what we do with schools and what we do with dump trucks. I just would leave it to the town manager to sort of vet that, whether or not it is possible for that one software to be used for both purposes, and then we can make a decision.
John, just
Hold
a
on, let me just
correction,
What?
just
Sorry.
a correction on
Sure.
what you already said. So we're not reducing the custodians, we're reducing the ask.
The ask.
Right,
Yes, yes,
we're
yes.
not
I'm sorry.
cutting positions.
No, correct.
I just
So-
wanted to
No,
make that
no, you are
crystal
absolutely
clear.
right. So the
Yeah.
ask of, we were gonna go from 36 to, from 38 to 36.
Right, we
Yeah.
have 36 now.
No, 2 new positions.
The 2 new
We're-
positions.
We're cutting
The
the
2 new
requested 2 new
Yeah,
positions,
Yeah.
not positions that are in place.
No, I'm very clear about that,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
just wanted to
Thank you
make
for
that clear.
clarifying, yeah. So, and then, you were gonna recommend, and there was the question about the $11,300 training, which was discussed in DPW. So, so those would be amendments which would get put forward, on Monday.
And
Is
then
there
I have a-
anything,
I
there
have
seems to
another
be confusion or commotion.
to get the paper.
I have another revenue question, and I think we will take the revenue on WPC. So if you go to page 80 in the blue book, page 80, we've got under 2026 revised revenue. And if you look at the budgeted number under revenue, and then you look under revised revenue, you've got the 9,900,000. And then we dropped the revenue down to rounding numbers, just for argument's sake, 8 million. So that's a $1.9 million difference in revenue.
Yeah, it is. You're going to hit, if you're lucky this year, 8.1 million in those user fees. I mean, when I had this budget put together, the estimate was 7.7. And it's going to be somewhere between 7.7 and 8.1.
So what you're saying is, over the last year, we've dropped $2 million in water pollution control collection.
No, what I'm saying is that
It was
in
incorrectly
fiscal year 2024, you were at 6.9. In fiscal year 2025, you're at 6.2 actuals, right? You increased the rate by 6%.
Right,
So these are actuals, right? You
I see.
increased the rate by 6%,
yeah,
and somehow miraculously budgeted 9.1 million. Now, if you look if you look back at the budgets for those, you're gonna see those numbers being close to 9 million. So what you projected versus what you actually brought in has been $2 to $3 million below what you thought, for sure. Yeah.
So with the revenue, with the increase in the rate.
Yep.
We didn't gain any money at all.
No, I just right now, again, if you look at actual in 2025, we're at 6.2, right?
I have 6.586.
Well, you're looking at, I'm just looking at the charges for service.
I'm sorry.
I'm just looking at the charges for service, because that's the driver. I mean, that's where all the.
Oh, you're looking up here. I'm
Yeah.
looking at the bottom
Yeah.
lines,
That
Matt.
includes the fund balance.
Yeah. So if you look at the charges for service, you know, again, what you were estimating were numbers a lot higher than that in 2024, 2025. I don't know exactly when you made a change to how you're doing your billing. And at the same time, you changed your rate. And then the next year, you changed your rate again. I think you increased it by 6%, I think was what the number was. And again, you had actuals. And you estimated, you know, the town adopted a budget with an estimate of $9.1 million. And that's not where the revenue was ever going to be.
Okay.
And so what, and I'll let you know, so this is a lot bigger issue from a lot of different perspectives. I mean, one, from a standpoint, you have a lot of work you gotta do, right? And you still have to do the treatment of what it is. And we need to take the time to make sure we do it right and we don't just rush into something. I think the budget that I've proposed for next year stabilizes where we're at. We're pretty sure we're going to be in that range of revenue. We can't do everything we want to do on the capital side next year, but we can do some things. We can, you know, meet the operational needs with this budget. And we have time then to figure out what those rates really need to be and make sure that we're doing it the way we need to do it. And so that's why, rather than just throw a number out there and say, let's do this. And I don't think that's, you know, what our residents expect of us or what we owe to our residents to do it that way. I mean, we need to put the time in to come up with the rates that actually are solid estimates. And you know, unfortunately, the time wasn't spent in doing that, and so here we are. And you know, just some numbers to turn your stomach, if it's okay.
I mean, do we need to? I just,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we're trying to get through this, and I understand the question. Look, on this subject, at some point, we would need to look at having a water pollution control committee that is not the town council. Every other town has that. I respect the work that we all try to do, but let's be honest, we do not spend enough time focusing on this. And it is categorically the place where there is the most risk in the town's budget. And I just think we need to have, as a council, a discussion about how we manage this piece of our budget. And because I just don't think that we have the capacity, no disrespect to people, to be focusing on it the way that it deserves to be paid attention to. That's my 2 cents. So I don't think we're gonna resolve what you're gonna present here today. So that being said, is there anything else?
I had a procedural question.
Yeah, hold on, please wait.
Where's it showing on the budget?
So it's a revenue loss.
It's a revenue, I know,
It's a
but,
revenue loss for the town.
right, but
She's asking
that
about
1.4,
the ECS.
because
So that's a revenue loss.
I don't want to get into that whole thing that happened a couple of years ago, so.
Let me,
It's under the
if I could,
laws.
Councilor Pisner, so I just understand. I'm gonna use round numbers. If we are getting $30 million in ECS money, and there is an Alliance grant, the ECS money that comes to the town is reduced by whatever the grant amount is. The town has to fill the gap, and the Board of Education, the $1.4 million, it sits with the Commissioner of Education. They apply for that money as in the form of a grant. But what the state, so Representative Hall and I were going through this, from the state standpoint, the amount of money Enfield is getting is exactly the same. The amount of money that's coming to Enfield.
So we're getting the 2838 and
Yes.
not the 29.
Correct.
So we're getting 1.4 million less into the town
Into the town
Into the
side
town
of the
side.
budget. It's going
But it
directly
will
to
go
the Board of
directly.
Ed.
It will go
Yes.
directly to the school.
And that's
To the board.
included in what, and they know that, and they're still asking for this amount, even though they know they're getting that 1.4.
That is including that is included, that's all included in their ECS grant.
Right, because there's no revenue. I couldn't find revenue in the Board of Ed
No.
budget.
Because they're recording the entire, I don't have the Board of Education budget, in front of me,
I do.
but I believe that they are anticipating the entire ECS amount.
It was,
Part of it will require, is it?
The last one. Starting at 151.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
So, but where's the revenue? This is the expenses.
There's no revenue. We
There's
could not
no-
find any
There's
revenue.
no revenue. He did not put the revenue in.
No.
They're only showing
Yeah.
the expenditure
It
of
is
the money that they're requesting.
Yeah, it is in, the revenue numbers were in his actual presentation.
yeah.
They were
it
not,
wasn't-
they're not
They're not
here.
in here.
Okay.
But just to be, so people understand, if you look at the revenue dollars, the actuals from 2025, that's when the full grant was coming into the town. This budget book reflects the 1.4 out of that revenue source. So the 1.4 million is coming out of the ECS grant and going directly to the Board of Ed.
Okay,
So, and they've anticipated that revenue in their budget.
in their budget, okay. And the other monies that's coming in, the one-time,
Yes,
That's coming off, so
that should be coming off us. We took that off this big board, correct?
yes.
Matt, you took that 1 point,
It's one
It's
point,
up there,
it's
right?
1,900,000 and.
Yes.
yeah,
Right there.
So we are fortunate in that we have not passed our budget yet, so we are able to send this as part to the schools as it's intended.
So they're getting another 1.9.
no, we're taking it off.
We are, no,
It's
we are
not something
taking it
that
off.
we're taking it off.
Okay,
Yes, it is money that is gonna go to them, but it's left that we're gonna use this to help fund what they're asking for. It is
It's coming out
it
of
is-
the
it is
town.
a-
I
it
just
is-
want to make sure,
It
because
is
we
a
ran
mill
through
rate
this
reduction.
horrible scenario
No,
a couple of
it's
years
not.
ago.
This is completely different. This is a mill rate reduction. It is mill rate reduction. Yes. So,
And it should be like 1.7, the number,
1.09.
so
But
that's
then
a
there
good
was additional
question.
money,
There's,
1,768,134.
so it should be 1,786,838. That's the total revenue coming into the town.
Yes.
So
Of
do we
which-
have all that up there?
John, do we have all that?
We have, what I received from CCM showed an increase in the supplemental Pequot grant of $575,188.
Right,
Supplemental education aid of $1,192,946, and an increase in the pilot payment of $87,842.
and that's a total of
1,850,000,
1.78.
1,855,976.
I have 876, but close enough. So we haven't accounted for all that up on the board yet.
Oh, everything I know is right here.
It's on the board.
There.
The 1,700, the 1.786 is up there.
I have
Have
not
we-
received any information of us receiving 1.7 million anywhere. Not in addition to this. This is what I know of.
So that adds up to what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's my
that is,
question.
those three numbers add up to the 1.7.
Right.
Yes,
So we've taken that off the
Yes.
mill. Okay,
yes,
great.
yes.
Perfect.
What is
Okay.
not there is the $300,000 that
That
we
we're
are gonna
waiting
get.
on.
So that's
Okay.
not there.
Right.
If that were there, again, you can decide to do with it what you want, but it could be $300,000 of found money, or you can put it up, but it's coming. So what do you want to do?
And what about, and what about the $600,000 that you found from
That's up
sweeping
there.
everything? Is that up
It's
there?
there.
I think
Yep.
that
That
that's
is
up
up
there. I think we put that.
What do you want to do about the 300,000?
The 300 for prison.
Well,
Oh,
question is, do you want to reduce the mill rate with that,
Yes.
or do you want to potentially use that to do something mid-year?
Is it one
so
time?
the,
I would reduce.
this is a one-time thing.
Excuse me.
I'm gonna offer my 2 cents, do with what you want. The purpose of us getting these funds is because it is to mitigate the shortfall in revenue that we get from serving the prison. If it's $300,000 and there's an EMS need, maybe when the money comes, that it gets allocated for something there. If it's an ambulance, equipment, whatever, or we leave it in fund balance. My recommendation, my personal feeling is wait till we have the money and then decide what we do with it.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, Carol asked me a question. So I would rather put it towards the mill rate personally.
No. I don't agree with that.
I wouldn't support that.
Just because it's a one-time thing, it's not a recurring amount of
We
money.
have to make it up next.
That's
Yeah.
the concern.
But it should be, so we could work on that.
So, yes,
Because
that is
we're
the
getting
plan.
shortfall
Yeah.
with prisons.
So
Nice.
So the problem is, it's not just Enfield. It is a $6.5 million shortfall statewide, so it's not just asking for one. We can continue to ask for it, but I think it's a much bigger issue that, again, that's just a bigger issue. So we can move on. So you had a procedural question, Counselor Zanotti?
I did, thank you. So, lost the page. Oh, this. So I know that myself and I had reservations about some of the positions that were being added procedurally. If amendments were put forward by any individual, I'm not necessarily sure I'm going to put forward amendments, but I may vote for amendments. Would they be by department, or would could an amendment be these positions together collectively?
Well, the way that I believe we still do it, you would have to go to the particular department that it's in and make that, because there's multiple
Yeah.
lines, right? There's going to be wages, salaries, health insurance, social security, Medicare. So each one of those lines would have to be amended.
Okay, and then when we vote on these, as the deputy mayor had referenced, so the amendments will be for the adjustments that we're making to the budget up or down, correct? Those are the only things that we're doing. Okay, I appreciate that. I guess my kind of closing comments here is that being at 1.61 hovers around $400 probably on average for tax increase, so we're probably like $1.5 million overall in the budget, higher than where I would like to be. So, I mean, that's my general perspective. I'll have to sit with that and decide where to go from there, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. My only comment to that is, if you're gonna propose amendments and you don't have consensus,
That's why I probably
it's,
do that.
all it is taking time. So with that, nobody has anything else?
I do. So to that remark, I think it's.
I'm sorry, Joe, let me be clear. That was not directed at you.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Okay.
I know it wasn't.
Okay,
So all I'm saying is that the process on Monday, we will get Matt ahead of time what we want in
Yep.
amendments. So he has those and he has all the totals for like personnel, proposed personnel that we want line itemed out. So we'll get him a list of everything
Yep.
ahead and then we'll run through them. And obviously we won't have, everybody voting with us on stuff. But our goal was to get this budget down to half or a quarter mil increase. And that's what we're gonna be running.
okay.
So, this is, with the referendum coming up for the schools, I think we've got to hold that mill rate as low as we can if we expect to get a referendum passed. And I think that was our goal in the budget process. So those are really where we're going for the residents because, we are making an effort to keep the taxes as low as we can, especially knowing we have $500 million school projects coming down the pike. So.
Okay, so on that, yes, you would propose those?
Yep.
With Matt?
Yep.
Would you procedurally, I don't know if you're willing to agree here that, would you be okay if there are amendments that are made, some of the things that are on the board, to put those on a consent agenda rather than vote on them so we can, those are things we all agree on. So what's on the big board, those are all amendments also.
Right.
So would you be comfortable agreeing to those being on a consent?
Yeah.
And we will only read through the things, because these things get, can we do that?
Well, you've done, I don't know if it would be considered part of a consent agenda because it's amendments to the budget, but you have in the past voted the entire amendment package.
Correct, but we don't agree on what the entire amendment package is. So what I would, and you can decide what.
It would be amendments to the amendment.
Correct. Well, if you put them all on, if you put all of the amendments together on the same roster, we will agree on items 1 through 40, let's just say, and items 41 through 48, 49, we don't. We can put items 1 through 40 on a consent agenda. We can approve those, and then we can read one by one the things that we don't agree on. I don't know if that works procedurally. You can decide.
So I'm guessing that there's more than what we talked about tonight in terms of cuts.
No, we went through all the things that they want to change.
We'll give you the revenues that we want to add back in.
Yeah, so I think there's more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, we have what was talked about tonight, so we can make all those. Then we send it out for the agenda, right? So anything that they're going to be doing over the weekend and get to us won't be on that particular thing that's on the agenda.
Okay.
So they would have to be made on the floor effectively, those different changes that you would be outside of what we just talked about tonight.
No question.
So we can get them to you, yeah, tomorrow or Friday, well, what's?
Tomorrow's Friday.
Tomorrow's
Tomorrow's
Friday,
Friday,
yeah,
I
my
get it
days
to you
are
tomorrow.
blurred. So if we get them to you tomorrow, Matt, you can have them set up on the desk, they just won't go on the agenda. Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
We're gonna be getting that agenda done as quickly as possible tomorrow. So like if you got us first thing in the morning, 9 o'clock, if you had all those things, we could actually get it on the agenda that goes out to the public. But if we don't get them in time to do that,
Okay,
then, we're gonna send the packet out with what we got.
right, so we could get them to you, even if we don't get them to you tomorrow, I know we're meeting Monday, but we could have something typed up Monday morning if we get.
Yeah, we
Okay.
could, so I mean, what I'm just saying is what goes out Friday, the packet,
Yeah.
those would be there.
Okay, yep,
But if you get it to me Monday morning, we can put it all together, so we can put it on the desk, so
okay,
everyone can see what it
Okay,
is. It
perfect.
just wouldn't be
yeah.
part of
in
the agenda.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Well, I think one of the benefits of broadcasting these is people know that there are amendments coming. We all know what they are. We've discussed them here already. There's no surprise here to anybody, and we'll just vote
Yeah.
as they come.
Yeah.
So then maybe we can approve, oh no, we have to amend the amendments. So, got it. Okay. Did you have a?
Yeah, just
procedural
one
question?
more, and I apologize in advance for it, I'm just trying to wrap my head around something. So per my emails, when I had discussed kind of where I felt comfortable about 1.14 mils, I know that there has been practices in the past from the council that once they've finished the individual line item cuts, that they've gave direction to staff for the additional. So for the additional to make up the difference. So in regards to that, I couldn't put forward an amendment for that, would I? As an ability, or would that would require the consensus of the council, correct?
No, you would need consensus before staff were to go and.
Yeah,
do
that's my,
something
for,
further.
not
You
for
have
that,
to
I'm asking about amendment
Correct.
for.
You would have to be
on the
specific.
agendas, yes.
You would need to be specific about what you wanted to amend. Yes?
Or you could do a flat cut according to the departments, like a percentage cut, right, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, you could make a motion to reduce 5% out of, the police budget. But I mean, the difficulty is that if you adopted it, you wouldn't know what that really is, right?
I know it won't get adopted, it's for the.
Right, no, I know, I mean, and if you understand, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
I'm just trying to wrap it up.
Yeah,
Actually,
but I guess
something
just,
a little
so with all due respect, that's just bad budgeting, but because you're taking an action, you have no clue what the end result, because,
So I appreciate that context.
Yeah.
That makes it, because I could.
because, if you say, I want to reduce again 5% out of public works.
Because we didn't have time to discuss it.
Right.
Thank you. That answers my procedural question. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah, that worked.
But in the past, we have done.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn if we could. Are we done?
I did.
All in favor?
We done said.
Yeah.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.